I think we can start. We're all there. I hope everybody had a good day, and welcome to the Glass Virus Professional Practice Seminar Series. The Glass Virus is a platform for educational strategies, and usually we do think tanks and conferences, but due to Corona, as you know, we are bound to online conversations, and this is exactly what we're doing. The seminar series introduces different topics, different artists, curators, and a broad audience that discusses those topics. And today is the last of a series of 5, where we have a different topic. It's called New Work and New Audiences, and probably you've all known that. We'll start in a minute. You can participate by putting your answers in the chat. There's no Q&A today. It was too difficult to monitor the Q&A and the chat, so we decided to just have the chat. Please put your questions there. You can also say hello, say who you are, and we'll pick up the questions at the latest at the end of the conversation. We have to see how that goes, but maybe also bring them in if they fit in the conversation. Before we start, I have to explain that because of the limited time, we give every speaker approximately 5 minutes. But we also know that you can get carried away easily if you speak and have a lot to say, as we expect our speakers also. But we have to limit their time, and it could occur that we have to interrupt them. So that's not out of unpoliteness, but it's just to keep enough time for our conversations. Today's moderator is Caroline Madden. Caroline is from the National College of Art and Design in Dublin, Ireland. And she is also engaged with the Glass Virus as an advisor, sharing her thoughts and ideas with us. So thanks to Caroline, thanks to the members of the panel today, and Caroline will take it from here and introduce them. Have a good day.
Thank you, Jens, and thanks for having me participate in this. Welcome everybody. Tonight we have a great group of guests who are both 2 are curators and the third is an artist, and all are doing current, very contemporary work, and that is why they've been asked to speak to you today. Nadja will have just co-curated an exhibition, Unbreakable Women, with 60 artists at the Barango Foundation. Emer Lynch is currently working on a project that's going to be opening with the Biennale next year. And Daan Gielis has just recently opened an exhibition, and it has sold out. And so we'll be hearing from that a little bit later. So I would like to, at this point, introduce Nadja. Nadja is an artistic director and producer. She's the founder of a charity based in the UK called Art Action Change, and is currently launching Everything I Want, which is a hybrid platform advocating ethical products. In a past life, she was a journalist. Most of it's in written form. She is committed to social progress and women's empowerment. Romain was a co-chair of Eva Ansler's 1 Million Rising in 2012, the initial campaign to end violence against women, and raised a great deal of money at that time. She's also served as an advisor to the board for Women and Women International. So as an activist for women in these times, I think it's history has been quite faceless for women in the fine arts. So I think she brings a really fresh perspective to us this evening. So the floor over to you, Nadja, if you would like to share your most recent activities with us. Thank you, Nadja, and welcome.
Thank you, Caroline. Thanks, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you. So Caroline, yes, as you mentioned, my practice has been pretty wide through the years. I started my career in journalism after studying art history. And then I have been a film producer for many years. and engaging then on a parallel life with curating, producing art projects after having produced feature films, and also working with charitable organizations, mainly around the topics of empowerment of women and how to give access to women to education and jobs in countries where this is still a challenging issue for them, but also in Western country, you know, supporting women who are victims of violence and young girls who are at risk of violence and trafficking, and yeah, and also working with children. So Art Action Change, my charity, mainly works with children around education and their mental issues and empowerment, you know, giving children the sense that their voice counts. And I've been working the past years with artists who are working in these areas. And yes, I'm just launching now. It's my, you know, commercial. I mean, my way of living. I would say I've been launching this platform for ethical craft. It's looking at objects that are between functional objects and art objects, unique pieces. Working with independent designers in fashion and design, and supporting craft. Also, always with having in mind this idea that by supporting the artisans, you support a community and you allow a community to thrive. So here today, I'm here talking to you about Unbreakable Women in Glass, which is an exhibition I had the pleasure to co-curate with Koen van Mechelen, was an artist. Koen actually designed the poster of the exhibition that you can see here. And the exhibition was born as a reaction to the pandemic. Adriano Berengo, which probably some of you are familiar with, Adriano Berengo has a studio, for creating glass in Murano, in Danès, and a foundation. So the Fornace, where the glass is made, invites artists to create pieces in the Fornace, and the foundation organizes exhibitions. He has started years ago an ongoing series of exhibitions called Glass Stress that are held during the Biennale of Art in Venice, primarily at the Palazzo Franchetti in Venice, and now at his space in Murano. And Adriano Berengo has been really, I mean, what the Fornace is doing is probably, I mean, it is unique in the world because there isn't, I mean, Murano is unique in the history of glass. It's 700 years of making glass in this small island in the Venetian lagoon. And Adriano Berengo has been, you know, the person in Murano focusing on contemporary glass and working with visual artists whose primary medium is not necessarily glass, but bringing this fresh look of people who aren't experts of the medium, but to explore it and pushing the boundaries of this medium. So basically, Women in Unbreakable, Women in Glass was in the summer, Adriano Berengo realizing that, you know, most exhibitions in Venice were even postponed or canceled, and trying to find something really impactful and a strong statement for the city. And he realized that he has worked in the past 2 decades with many female artists, and as this metaphor for a new beginning after this pandemic and all this pain and suffering, this idea that, you know, a kind of romantic idea in a way that women are like the future, and this symbol of the Renaissance, giving birth to something new. And also this idea that bringing female energy in the art of Murano, which is a very male island. So all of a sudden, you know, it was doing this exhibition with 64 female artists. So for us as curator, for Cohn and I, the challenge was we didn't create new work. I mean, some works have been created for the exhibitions, but most of the material were pieces that have been produced in the past 2 decades. And a lot of different artists from across the globe, from Egypt to Brazil, from the UK to Middle East, and in the space that is very different. So this is the heart of the exhibition, and it shows, you know, directly the diversity. So the Fondazione Berengo is in Murano, and the location is a former factory, but closed in the 60s, and that Adriano Berengo bought about 20 years ago. And there are different rooms. Some are really like a white cube. There's a space outside, and there is the heart, which is the piece, the room we just saw, which is the Fornace, the old Fornace. So in this exhibition, we had to work with very different works. So this is the work of Lucie Horta, for instance, which is a work which she really explored the possibility of working with forms that glass allows, doing this series of masks. So obviously, you know, mask is a very Venetian thing, but she has a collection of masks around the world. And she's an artist who works on with communities on project around environment usually, and social project. So she built this piece of different masks, typically as if she had done a workshop with people to create the figures, which she didn't do here because she created the mask during the lockdown. But she did this series of mouths, eyes, noses, like a database, and then she mixed them and created this series of marks. So they really have, like, they all seems like being part of the family, because the elements, there's a base of common elements, and this has all been done in the Fornace, which the glass really allows to play with the colors, to play with forms. And some artists don't think that glass is too seductive, but for Lucie Horta, it's really a way for her to express more of what she wants to express. So this is the work of Lolita Timofima, who's an artist based in Italy. So this is interesting because she has played with the glass, but with the tree, which is a real tree, obviously, and the tree is still living now. You know, it's still there. Yeah, it has lost its leaves, and there's many, you know, metaphor and idea behind the work. We won't go into it. But what's interesting is that glass is always a living material. So if you leave glass, I mean, you probably all know that. If you leave glass in the sun, then the material is going to start to move. You know. So there is this parallel between the glass and the tree is also a reference to women, as in mythology. You know, there is this parallel made between the body of a female and the body of a tree. We can see more. Yeah, this is the Maya Graziosin, who's working with these pieces on mirrored glass. She's an artist from Venice. Monica Bonvicini, who's very important Italian artist and international artist, who won the Lion of the Gold Lion at the Venice Biennale in 96, I think. No, and Denise Milan, who's a Brazilian artist, was reflecting on the geology of glass. You know, the glass being this material that is between liquid and solid. And so she explores this idea, and there are several artists reflecting on what glass is and the geology of the material. We can go to the next. Brigitte Gowans, but that she's, you know, she had a disease, so it's actually, this is her kidneys, but it's mirrored glass, which probably most of you have recognized, but often people ask, okay, what it is, they think it's painted, but no, it's mirrored glass. Then again, you know, using some Charlotte Gillenhammer, using some mirrored glass, we can go more. Alors, Charlotte Holtz, it's interesting because she's typical, one of the artists who has played with Murano, the idea we have of Murano glass. So it's the millefiore, the golden leaf, and these techniques where blowing the glass, you incrust the figure inside. So you feel like if you walk in the street in Murano, you see a lot of this using this technique. Chiara Denise was a very important Italian artist, a conceptual artist, who worked a lot with glass and light. So we can go to the next one as well. But you see really the diversity. This was mainly partly casted. Next one. Again, Elvira Bach. That's, you know, more than an allusion. It's really appropriating the typical vocabulary of Murano glass. Alors, Enrica Borghi, it's interesting. She's also an Italian artist, and here she has used an element of the fornace. So this part was used in the past to cool down the glass. So she's using the fornace. She mixes glasses, which is such a delicate, beautiful, rare material, something magic. There's really a magic to the glass. And she's mixing it with plastic, which is really a part of her vocabulary. And what do you do with plastic and how do you reuse plastic? It's called Grigio Laguna because it's a reflection on the Laguna as well. Eric Dixon, well, that comes in fact from a performance where she actually put herself and slept on the piece of glass. So that's really an interesting way of doing glass. This is actually a piece with neons by Federica Marangoni, very important Italian artist based in Venice. And the neon are moving. So it would be better in the video. Greta Gerber, it's a very, very beautiful piece. We can go, sorry, we have to go. So this is a casted piece. And the Studio Berengo is developing what will become probably the biggest studio for casting in the world, but it's already like an amazing studio run by a young English guy and who lives in Murano now. And casting is something that visual artists who are not glass artists often prefer because you have more control. You know, you can send a drawing and say, okay, this is what I want, and then it will be cast. Where when you blow glass, there's so much uncertainty about what you can get. Giannina Chape, who's a Brazilian artist, and nature is at the heart of her work, and the female body. So she has used there some element from the Laguna. Joana Vasconcelos was from Portugal. So she really gave a tribute to chandeliers, which is again one of the typical elements of Venice and Murano. Josefa Gashmukh. So this is made like of this very small pieces, very sharp pieces of glass. It's an interesting piece because it's very beautiful, very stunning and seductive when you see it. But it's very dangerous because it's all these small pieces of sharp glass. So there's something a bit scary about the piece. We can go to next one.
Nadia, I'm afraid I have to interrupt you here.
Okay.
But
I think we get the sense of how diverse the exhibition is.
Yes. And can we see the exhibition somewhere? Is there a website that we can?
So if you go on if you go on the website of the Fondazione Berengo and you look at Unbreakable Women in Glass, you will see images and you will see videos. There's a video of me talking where you see images, and there's a video of Koen Minkelen, the co-curator, also talking. And it's interesting to have his perspective as well, because we really have this male-female energy in creating the exhibition. And yeah, it's the 2 points of view are different, but very complementary.
Thank you, Nadja. That's a really great showcasing of the work. I know there's 64 to get through, but actually, just to echo a little bit of Jens's question there, I believe that there's going to be an exhibition catalog compiled by Susan Fisher-Schirling, and it's going to be contributed to by Gabriella Bilani. Will that exhibition catalog be online or available for people to buy? Because I think one of the things is it's a wonderful exhibition, but because of COVID, nobody can go see it. And on the website, there's very little visual access to the work.
So in fact, the catalog is compiled by the Fondazione Berengo.
Okay.
And the catalog will be published by Rietveld.
Mm-hmm.
We're finishing now the layout of the catalog. So probably it will be ready in a few, maybe 3-4 months. Is there an online edition? I'm not sure, I don't think so. But there will be, hopefully, a different version of the exhibition circulating. You know, I mean, some of the pieces are already in other exhibitions, but they have been asked to do this exhibition abroad. And we did a lot of Zoom tour of the show during the whole time, and there have been people visiting it. It was part of the Venice Glass Week, which is a festival. In September, we actually won the prize for best exhibition. So I mean, as much as there have been people traveling to Venice, the show has been well attended. It was very successful, considering. But yes, it's not as normal, of course.
And again, I'd circle back to your comment there about co-curating. What was the dynamics between yourself and your colleague as a co-worker? Like, who took responsibility for what, and how did you decide which of the 64 women would be included in the exhibition?
Well, what's interesting is that Koen knows the venue very well, because he curated a show before, or at least 2 shows there in the space. And Koen has a long relationship with Adriano. He's an artist. He's been creating his glass pieces at the Fornace for almost 20 years. And he's an artist, so who makes glass. So obviously his relationship is very much with the material, how he engages with the material, he knows the space. When my relationship was more about what these women, as seeing them as individual voices, and what each voice is trying to express, and how these voices can dialogue with each other. And I see the female energy as something, well, I don't really think about it because that's my energy too. When Koen has a reflection on female energy, you know, and a strong reflection about female artists, and how important it is to give them a voice. So it's been an interesting balance, I think. And to the question of the selection of the work, but as I said, you know, a lot of the works have been done in the past years, and it was really Adriano Berengo looking at his collaboration with female artists and bringing them together. The challenge was more to put all this diversity of voices together, but it seems like you know, an orchestra and not like a cacophonic voices. And I have to say, it worked very well. There's a magic to the exhibition. I think it's the place, it's the pieces that are very strong. There's something that works well. yeah, but it's not always easy to say why an exhibition works or not. You know, there's elements that are not something you can plan really.
Just Emer or Dan, have you any questions there for Nadja?
Yeah, and just within your research methodologies, I was wondering how important it was to identify people with transferable skills into glass, and also in terms of sort of in visiting artists in the studio, in terms of seeing people making, how that affected your research process as well.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question, sorry, because it was cutting a bit. So.
Oh, I'm just wondering how important it was to identify people with transferable skills into glass.
To people who can, well, as I said, you know, many of the works were already done, so it's not that we had to, and the artists who produced new works were artists who already had produced works at the Fornace.
Okay, so there were, yeah.
But pretty much you pretty much can do anything with glass, you know, if you want to work with glass. I mean, and any idea you have, you can translate it. Then the material has these limits, like any other material. But if any artist can decide, oh, okay, I want to do a piece in glass, and definitely, I mean, a place like the Studio Berengo, where they work with artists every day, and that's quite unique. It's a place where they can find a team who can dialogue with them.
Were there any constraints around like the budget or COVID or timelines, for example, that really affected people's expectations in terms of?
Well, yeah, COVID, yes, because sometimes people can't travel. So that's the main constraint with COVID, is that not, you know, people can't travel. You have, it's challenging to do anything.
Was there many artists in the exhibition that only work with glass, or were most of the artists working with other materials as well?
I don't want to say something wrong, but I think all of them works with different materials. You know, I don't think there's one who only works with glass.
Only one?
No, there's not one.
Okay.
Well, I might say something wrong, you know, because there's 64. So when you ask the question, it's. But I think no, I don't think there's any of the artists in the show that only work with glass. You have artists who primarily work with glass, like Maria Grazia Rosine. Well, she might be the one, actually. Maybe but I think she's worked with other materials, but she's primarily an artist who works with glass. But Koen van Mechelen, he's not in the show, but he's the co-curator, works mainly with glass. Maria Kazoun, who also lives in Venice, works a lot with glass, but not only. No, Federica Marangoni has worked a lot with glass, but yeah, I don't think there's one artist who only works with glass.
And can you see a difference with people that only work with glass for one work or a couple of works towards people who have worked more with glass? Could you see a difference in approaching the material?
Well, you can see where you can see the difference is in the relationship with the maestro, because when you work with blow glass and you've done a few pieces, you got into this rhythm and this dance with the maestro, because it's not in your hands, it's in the hands of the maestro. And it's also in the hands of God, because the glass is very unpredictable. So when you're familiar with glass, it's something you know and you play with, and you love that aspect of working with glass. Otherwise, you would not do more pieces. If it's your first time, you might have some frustration on the fact that you can't really control the material and you can't control the maestro either.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Nadja. I'm going to move on to the next speaker now, and we're going to have some time at the end for more questions towards Nadja. Thank you so much, and it's a wonderful exhibition of glass artists. I'm curious to see what Judy Chicago's new seminal work will be out of working with glass stress, and looking forward to reading and hearing
well,
more.
It's beautiful. We can't show it yet, actually, because she still wants to improve, but I can tell you it's stunning. It's really, really beautiful.
Excellent. So it's good to see women from really historical, not historical figures, but figures that stretch quite a span of time. So thank you, Nadja. So now I'd like to move on to our second speaker, Emer Lynch, who is an independent visual art curator based between Ireland and Switzerland, interested in utilizing non-traditional sites and contexts for making exhibitions that invite broad audiences to engage with the artworks. She has a tremendous experience in terms of curatorial experience. She's worked with the Irish Museum of Modern Art. She's also been a gallery coordinator for the Mother's Tank Station. And she's currently in her role with Artists of Experimental Moving Image in Ireland. The thing that has always drawn me to Emer's work is that she's constantly interrogating the spaces between the space, that is the space between the audience and the artifact, or the space between the audience and the speaker, and the audience to get some more authenticity of experiences. So without further ado, Emer, I'll pass the floor over to you, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Caroline. So I think we'll start the slides and I'll run through. Thanks a million, Jens. So I wanted to begin by a little animated introduction to myself. With this visualization of the Aesop's fable, The Two Pots, by way of introducing how important material properties and the performance of objects and people is in my practice, as well as really the moral codes that are built into the things that we own. And also as a beginning nod towards anthropomorphism. So I studied glass at NCAD finished there in 2009, and then I did my master's in the Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Dún Laoghaire in Ireland. And I finished there in 2013. So between the two experiences and also in between these two education experiences, there were a lot of formative experiences that I had. So kind of jumping ahead a little bit, this is one of the shows that I curated when I was doing my master's. And it's really a good introduction to, at this point, I was quite purposefully curating glass as a primary material within exhibitions. This is a solo show by glass artist Charlie McFarland, which was in a gallery in Estonia, Gallery Pink. And the artist combined blown glass parts with found objects, often from early car manufacture, really pointing to anthropomorphism, and also looking at the advancement of modernism. So during my MA, I was really more and more sort of examining the conditions of exhibition spaces and the context that white cubes really bring to the presentation of artworks. This was a show that I curated a year after the one with Charlie, so it was at the very end of my MA. So this particular show, I think, was a really good example of how I used the site as a tool to make the work itself. It's a solo exhibition by Sophie Lusher at Tactic Gallery in Cork. And the installation used a phenomenological effect, often used in theatre, called Pepper's Ghost, to really bring forward the illusion of an image using glass and lights. Just to take a step back for a second, think about sort of my thinking process at the time when I was doing my master's, and around that time I was really looking back at some experiences in the past, and one really sort of formative experience was when I was interning at Derek's Glass Studios in Germany. So I'm looking back on that experience, I was really examining the use value of material and how really like a material needs to be encountered in context or in use in order to actually exploit it and to experience it. and also how greatly affected the experience of the material is by the conditions of its display. So one really good example is the installation of a window by David Schnell in the church in Leipzig. So I was lucky enough to be able to assist with this installation with Derek's Glass Studios. And then on the left, you can see the piece mid-install, and on the right, it's an example of the piece in fabrication at Derek's Glass Studios itself. And I was really interested in the difference of experiencing the painted glass in its setting with a lot of different sort of elements contributing towards its use value, such as the verticality of the glass, the sacred setting, the sort of inherent rituality and the history of stained glass processes, and also the direction and position of the window in relation to sunlight. And then in contrast to that, looking at a backlit piece of glass and how this kind of becomes decontextualized. And then thinking about in exhibition settings, how often stained glass is presented in this way with backlighting, and how this might sort of strip the context of the glass from the material itself. So just to point to another piece of research that's quite had a big effect on me was a film by John Smith called Slow Glass, a 1988 film that really explores lived space and the effect of glass in built environments. And then to really kind of jump forward a little bit, one of the ways that I was rethinking form after my master's, and again looking at the use value of artworks being consumed on the spot, was through curating live events. So one really good example of this is the series Foaming at the Mouth that I co-curated with an artist called Tracy Hanna. So these events took place in Dublin and in Amsterdam over a series of 8 events actually. And how you set up an event became crucial to harnessing the energy in the room. And then this is an exhibition that I curated in 2016. Again, I was looking sort of at really sort of bringing forward that energy that you get in a live event, but through static installations. This was a show that called Tables and Chairs and Other People that was installed in Linda's Mobile Home Park in Portrane in North Dublin. And I really wanted to sort of utilize the context of the site and the conditions of experiencing art on a mobile home park field on the coastline in the curation of the exhibition. And really looking at sort of production values and production time and immaterial processes. So just to jump quickly to the inquiry, this is a group that a research group and an art group that I'm part of. So it's really a good mix of thinking about curating for a decentralized audience experience. So it's really like trying to break down those sort of hierarchies of an installed artwork and an audience. So we're very much interested in the sublime in difference and nuance. And we've been lucky enough to curate events in Venice and in New York. So it's been a really great experience to look at sort of dematerialized processes and bringing those abroad too.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, thanks. Just the next slide. So the next project, which is the final one I talk about here in the presentation, it's a new project upcoming. And it's a really good mix of interests for me. So it's a commission I'm working with Imagining Sustainable Glass Network Europe to commission an artist called Salvatore Bluchen, who's traditionally a painter, to realize a work in glass. We applied to the Arts Council's new Commissions Award last year, which was successful and is fantastic. So Salvatore creates portraits in oils and pastels, and really sort of peels back a layer of everyday scenes to reveal the emotional or edging on magical underbody of life. So you can see sort of in the way that he composes his compositions within the square, and also his interest already in painting transparent objects. For me, he really stood out as an artist who would really be quite excited about working in stained glass, and he's delighted to go forward with this commission. So just the next slide. And then this is Salvatore. The image in the bottom is an early concept realization of how the work might be experienced in situ in a domestic space. And And then the image on the left is really looking at how Salvatore symbolically has already used broken glass. And you can maybe even see some of the lead lines coming through that he's quite interested in using within the composition.
That's great. Thank you, Emer. Really interesting to see the new project you're working on. Can you talk a little bit yet about where that might be showcased? I know that you're always looking for unusual spaces to showcase work. Could you just speak about that a little bit?
Well, I actually, in addition to the Commissions Award application, I did also apply to the project to the Arts Council last year to produce an exhibition around that commissioned work, which unfortunately wasn't successful. So now I have to rethink how to show the work to premiere it. So I am still, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I'm really interested in providing context with the presentation of the work, especially in the premiere. So really trying to avoid a situation where the work is presented in a white cubed gallery space that's backlit. So I'm just trying to rethink those. So maybe looking at like renting a venue for a short period of time to present the work, or perhaps like in a pub nearby also. But I think that it's just a little bit difficult at the moment because Ireland is still in lockdown for quite a while. So it's a hard one to kind of even imagine at this point. But
can you just talk a little bit about you were taking work and curating, work for like Venice? What was that like, or curating work for a place that would be like New York? So you're actually taking a work and an idea and how you negotiated those platforms as a curator.
Yeah, I think was there one in particular, the Venice one maybe?
Yeah, the Venice one that you showed there tonight.
With that space, so it was, I think often doing site visits is really important to me into part of my process, but it was really hard obviously because we weren't able to do site visits for the show in Venice. So we were really relying on sort of documentation of the space, and one member of the group had been there before, so she was able to relay her experience of what the lighting conditions were like, what the like forces that would create an exhibition were like. So we did factor in before the event happened some time to sort of navigate changes that would happen. So you kind of arrive with like a plan, and then you just factor in time to really negotiate the space when you arrive. So that event in itself, it was really about breaking down sort of those hierarchies that you would normally in the politics of an exhibition space of an installed exhibition. So we were actually wearing artworks on our bodies, as well as sort of navigating and inviting people to come through the different spaces with us as we walk through as well.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to the other two panelists for questions for Emer, Dan and Nadja.
We have talked a little bit about this before. I was just wondering, as you have studied arts yourself, getting into curating, how do you go about looking for artists, and how do you implement your own way of thinking about space, and how is the relationship between you and the artist in relation to that space? Are the artists you look for already working in a different way with the space, or is this something that you set up with the artist?
So first of all, how do I come across artists? I really try really hard to go and see as much art in person as possible. Degree shows, exhibitions in Ireland, abroad, and usually if there's something in mind, like an end point, it's usually most helpful for me to, in that context, to go to see shows knowing that there's something in mind that I'm sort of curating for. But in terms then of how I work with an artist, usually I would approach the artist with an idea of maybe doing a studio visit to get a sense of the person and how they work, and to see their studio and how their processes are developing. And then I really think it's important to, for example, with Salvatore, I had the idea that he might make this work in stained glass. So I think that I generally speaking, I see an opportunity, I see some slant of a person's work, and I see an opportunity to maybe for them to recontextualize their practice through one work or through some commission. So, and then I think with the spaces, especially with Foaming at the Mouth, all of those events happened in spaces where the weight of the institution was taken off. So it really opened up a space for artists to create without having those sort of formalities around it. So we really kind of withdrew from, say, comedy nights or pub nights, where in open spaces like pubs, where there is a certain license to bring in humor and to bring in more sort of a ribald or like a more expressive performative action that may not be received as warmly in an institution, for example. So I think with those, it was really looking at the energy of a person that we were inviting to be part of the event. And really sometimes you're taking a risk because maybe they've never performed before, but you feel like, oh, maybe this might work, and it often did. It often paid off. So.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions for Emer?
Yeah, I was curious to hear from you if you see that there's a new generation of young artists who are developing an interest around glass. Do you see that there's a new consideration for this material and a new way of looking at it and thinking about how to use it? I mean, how to experience it as part of a practice?
Yeah, I think so. Like I'm trying to think, like, whilst I've been working with Salvatore for the commission, your mind is more open to, maybe it's just because I'm working on this one specific project, but my mind has really sort of become more aware of maybe other people who are using stained glass in a contemporary art methodology. And I have come across, even yesterday, there's an exhibition online at the moment called High Heart in the Making. It's an IADT degree show exhibition. And there is an artist in that who's made a work in stained glass for that degree show. And she wouldn't come from a glass making background. And then, yeah, so I have noticed that it is creeping in. There's another artist as well, Owen Ryan, who has used a stained glass piece in an installation with other materials. So I think that I do see it, but I don't know how broadly it is though at the same time. So
maybe I can jump in because there's a question from Anne Baldry for Emer that relates to this question. She asks, did your work in Derek's in Germany change your attitude to work in glass from small scale to large scale? Or were you always interested in planning on working on a large scale in stained glass?
I was always interested in looking at a 2D form outside, and also bringing like a 2D, thinking about 2D in an outside context. I think my real takeaway from Derek's glass studios was really being in the presence of makers on a day-to-day basis, and really looking at like the different forms of communication that makers develop amongst themselves. And I really took a lot from that in terms of how I would think about the atmosphere of spaces and the politics of spaces. And that would also apply, I think, to my experience in the glass department in NCAD, in the hot shop and the cold shop. So we're just, really thinking about the politics of the space and the silent gestures and also the hand knowledge that's built up over time. So not, I guess, I wasn't so much thinking about the scale in that regard, but really more about the context of making and how I would take that into curation. And also I think like there's thinking about building up an atmosphere in a space when I'm curating. A lot of that came from looking at glass, the difference that like a piece of glass, one piece of material in a room can make to the whole room. So constantly thinking about volumes and implementing a piece into a larger space and what that does to affect the atmosphere of the whole space.
Thank you, Emer. I'm going to just ask you if you don't mind putting your website in the chat room so people can find out more about your curatorial practice and your different projects that you're working on at the moment. And we'll come back to you again in the final section. So now I would like to thank you, Emer, very much. Now I'd like to move on to Daan, our last speaker, who is an artist and has just opened an exhibition with Everyday Gallery. Daan's work explores conflicts and contradictions in the emotional, communicative, and social systems. His perception of these systems, he perceived the perceptions of these systems to be riddled with contradictions, and yet precisely because of those internal contradictions, these systems thrive. Contrasting feelings feed off each other, setting in motion a never-ending cycle, process from which there appears to be no possible escape. And at that, I'll leave it with you, Daan, to introduce your most recent and exciting body of work. Thank you, Daan, for coming and sharing with us tonight.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for having me. What I did for the small presentation is took some pictures to explain my history with schools and institutions. So this is the first work I graduated with in the first school I went to in Hasselt. This is also one of the first experiments I did with glass, because glass has been in my work on and off. I haven't experimented with the material that much, but on occasion it shows itself within my practice. So for this and the next slide, I was really looking into form and shape and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do still, because I graduated at 22 years old because of the Belgian system. So this is also an example of this very formal work I was doing back then. So I graduated it with a master's at 22 years old, and I really didn't know what to do after. I did some exhibitions for a year or 2 years. And then I decided to study another master's in the Netherlands. So the next slide is, this is from the first year I graduated with this work in the Netherlands. But then the feeling started creeping up on me that I was just doing very minimalist work without any soul or without any story or anything, without any body to really talk about. I was just having the feeling that I was just throwing stuff onto a big pile, and maybe some kind of career could come out of it, but it really didn't feel like I was invested at all. So after the first year, next slide, this is the work I graduated with in the second year. And this is a work I showed before as well in the first year, but then I started filling in this work with different materials. There's also glass in this one. And I started taking artifacts from my life and started implementing a personal story into the work. And it really felt like, maybe go to the previous one again. It really felt like a story was arising from this work, and I felt like I was investing something, and I felt like life came into these pieces. And this is also the first time I started using personal stories. Like, for example, my mom is a floral designer, so I started using plants. And this is from 2013. And now we jump into, if you go to the next slide, into the first solo exhibition I did in 2019. This was one of my most personal exhibitions I did. And this is a sculpture of the emoji of the wilting flower. I was really interested in this, this symbol, as it is something which is dying, but at the same time it's still standing up. So it's this in-between state, in between life and death. And the two frames on either side of the sculpture are found DVDs that I have been collecting for years, because I feel like DVDs still have a content that's of value, but when years are passing, these DVDs become more and more garbage. So whenever I find these DVDs in thrift shops, I buy them. This is all of the movie Michael Clayton. So this work can be made until I can still buy these DVDs, but whenever they really become garbage and not in thrift shops won't even sell them anymore, then this work also dies. So this was the first solo exhibition. And then in the same year, I did a bigger solo exhibition, You Won't Get What You Want. That's the first time I started experimenting with neon as well. And this was kind of the same idea about cyclical processes. For example, these are all terracotta tears that cry over themselves into these wishing wells, into eternity. Maybe next slide. I can explain more about, this is the most recent exhibition that's up right now in Everyday Gallery. This is an overview. Maybe next slide. And the small sculpture, this is all about a relationship with bigger systems and the relationship with the world as a bigger system around us. And this small sculpture on the left side is a bronze I made after the work, The Misanthrope by Bruegel the Elder. And the figure in the middle is walking away from the world. But maybe if you go to the next slide, you can, another one. Yeah, this is a close-up of the sculpture. The figure in the middle is walking away from the figure on the right, which is small guy or girl dressed up as an aardappel. I don't know the English term, but this is a Christian symbol that emperors held in their hand. It's a golden ball with the cross, the Christian cross on top, and this represents the world. So the old guy in the middle is walking away from the world because the small one is robbing him from all of his money. So he's walking away because the world is fucking him over. But at the same time, when he's walking away, there is these caltrops, kriapoten, we call them in Dutch. And this represents this danger of stepping, if you step into them, that when you walk away from the world, that you can be completely by yourself in an Arcadia. So it can be a utopian idea of being by yourself, but there is also no way of gaining a bigger meaning in life because you don't have this relationship towards the world anymore. So this was, for me, this whole exhibition was about finding a relationship with the world, with the bigger system, while at the same time knowing that these ways of trying to find a relationship to the world will fail at the same time, like in this small sculpture. Being in a relationship with the world will fuck you over, but walking away from the world will fuck you over as well. So maybe next slide. This is these are ceramics I made. They're approximately 35 centimeters high. These are loosely based on Hergé's drawings in the Tintin comics. And these almost represent an Arcadia, but there is, you can't see it in this picture, but there is also at the same time, there is again caltrops hidden in these bushes. So they represent being by yourself, but also again, being in danger of being only by yourself and not having a relationship towards a bigger system anymore. The next slide. And this is Tintin himself. Which is the other protagonist in the exhibition, because for me he's a figure that was really useful to tell this story. I think looking back at the first pictures, I've really developed my practice from something that was really minimal and super formal, going more into almost disparate stories that come together through all these protagonists. And for example, Tintin is one of those as well, because he's a guy who is a naive person who wants to make the world a better place through simple things, to simple solutions to the world. But also this figure becomes tired, and he lets his shoulders hang, and he gets a little depressed and sinks through his own shoes, and gets tired of always trying to make the world a better place. And this is also representing this dualistic relationship towards this bigger system. There is also 3 mobiles in the exhibition, and this really represents for me the way that you have a balance between these different ways of dealing with the world and these different dangers that occur within working with a bigger system. This is, for example, the subterranean boat that Tintin built in order to be in dialogue with the underwater world, which is not where we have to use tools to be in relationship with it. I think I have one more slide. And this is, for example, 2 neons. On the right side, there is the caltrop again. You can see there is many elements that are repeated throughout the exhibition to make the story readable. And on the left side, there is it's the logo by Agnostic Front. It's a punk band from New York. I have been in a punk band myself, and this really feels like a way of this subculture feels like a way of dealing with the world, breaking something down, and at the same time putting something new and fresh in place. So it feels like a very pure idea of a subculture to try to deal with the world again. But if you're in the scene for quite some time, you also realize that having the right friends, having the right clothes and everything becomes super important as well. So even this subculture and trying to deal with the world becomes corrupt again as well. And this is also a failed way of trying to deal with the world. That's in short what I did for the exhibition.
That's great. An excellent body of work. Super amazing. So Dan, I would like for you to just maybe expand a little bit. You're talking about relationships. I'd love to hear a little bit about the relationship you had with the gallery and putting this work together, and what the supporting mechanisms were there for you.
Well, we've talked about this before, and this is the first time I really felt like there was a very good and a wide supportive system. This is because it felt really professional this time. We had previews that were sent out. We had private catalogs that were made, online catalogs that were sent out. It is a commercial gallery, so I'm talking about the commercial side of things right now, because you can also see a difference, for example, between this exhibition and the previous one with the tears and the big neon. But this is the first time I really felt that people wanted to invest with me into the story that I'm creating and that I'm developing, and it felt like everything kind of fell into place together. So it's very different from previous endeavors I did with institutions, but it's just different takes on trying to build the career you're and the place you're trying to get at.
Well, when we spoke the last time, you said the show had sold out, and given that we're in the time of, almost, and so that given we're in the time of COVID, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what kind of PR instruments that the Everyday Gallery used to get the word out about your exhibition and to let people know that what's going on?
Well, I think an important thing is that the exhibition would have been on last year in August, and it was postponed 2 times because of COVID regulations. And I think for a big part, we were lucky as well, because, for example, the 2 openings before the show, because I did this show together with a friend. He had a solo, I had a solo, and we did a work together. And the 2 previous exhibitions weren't people from Antwerp, and they just announced new regulations, new COVID regulations. So, and this time it felt like people already gained some ways of dealing with the situation and dealing with social restrictions. And it also felt like people wanted to come out and wanted to invest together in the story, in the exhibition as well. Other than that, I think what was really a quality this time is that the gallery invested as well to work with Club Paradis, which is a communication agency within culture and arts in Belgium. And that gained a lot of attention from press in some of the biggest newspapers in Belgium, which helped as well tremendously in gaining attention towards the exhibition, and also the professionalism of sending out proper emails, proper online catalogs, and gave everything a fresh feeling somehow, and felt like it was a good time to step into the story with us.
Thank you so much. So we've come to that part of our evening where we're opening up to, actually, I'm going to also share this time with the panelists too, just because I know we're at time here, where we would open up to the audience for any questions, but also while you're getting in your questions there, I'd like Emer or Nadja, if you have any questions to put towards Daan here tonight. Thank you. Well, and just one last thing, we're at time now, are we, Jens?
Almost. No, it's a few minutes still.
Okay, all right. So I'll work with the panelists, and then I will ask the audience if you wish to stay on a little longer with us. Okay, thank you.
I would have a question for Daan. I mean, first of all, I really liked your work, and I really like the way you're using the neon. I think it's very fresh. So how do you see the next steps now for you in terms of exhibition, but also reaching out to galleries abroad, to new collectors? Do you have like something in mind as you want things to unfold, or you don't know really? Are you focusing on the new exhibitions? I know there are several questions here. But
no, but I think that those are an interesting set of questions, because this is something I was discussing with the people from the gallery as well, because it feels like there is some interest now, and it's a big question now of how to follow up on it, and how to stretch the success somehow. Sounds super cocky, but just to work the environment that we have right now. At the moment, I'm working on an exhibition for the Triennial in Bruges. I'm making a work for a group exhibition there. Then I'm making a work as well for the Horst Festival, which is a festival close to Brussels in Belgium. And then I was selected for the Sculpture Prize in Mechelen. We'll do an exhibition there as well. And then some group exhibitions, so that's for the coming months. And right now we're kind of planning because some works there was more interest if we should work further on existing works and stretch them into new works, or we're kind of thinking about what new works will come about, and I think a personal new step for me would be to really go a little bit more international. So we're also thinking about looking at other galleries that work in an international way in Belgium, or going abroad, and kind of networking towards opportunities like this, and expanding as much as possible into the bigger field that the art world is.
I was wondering as well, as storytelling develops in your work, does that formality also evolve in the writing around your work too? And if there's more storytelling does that mean that you might include more storytelling in the writing, or would you pull back from that in the writing?
This is something I have been blessed with, having a good contact, because when I was studying in Hasselt, a teacher of mine who was super young then as well, he was teaching me in philosophy. It's Bram Ive, who is teaching at the university in Leiden and Utrecht at the moment, and he is always in my making processes, thinking process, and making process as well. So we have multiple conversations on Zoom most of the time as well, about the works and how to develop the works on a conceptual level, but also even on a formal level. And he most of the time writes about my work. But at the moment, we're also thinking about making a publication together, and we're thinking about other writers and how we can involve interesting writing, for example, from the punk and hardcore subculture that I was in for quite some time. And another system is I'm dealing with an autoimmune disease, which is pretty heavy for me. Maybe even reach out to the doctors that have been treating me. I don't know, just different ways of gaining all these stories within the work and trying to make this book or this publication into one a bigger thing that expands into different directions as well.
And would you see that book almost as an artwork in itself, or is it there to contextualize the physical work?
Well, I think it's a back and forth. It is on the one hand to contextualize the works, but I think this could go into a work by itself as well, and almost flow over into each other. Not really trying to make a big difference between the two. Just have them influence each other and almost have the story out of the book accompany the works that are making and have them strengthen each other.
Cool. Sounds great.
Can I break into that with a question from the audience that I think relates to that and is directed to everybody, I think. Do you believe that the pandemic can serve as an accelerator for new work and specifically new audiences? Is this a chance in your experience, or is it just a loss? So this is for all of you.
Well, I think there probably is a new audience because many people have engaged with art and culture, few online events, having more time, plenty of time to do so, and finding also a way to approach works could be difficult to approach. You know, you walk in a white cook gallery, you don't know what's there, you don't understand. But now you have access to all this information and discussion online, but put things in a context in a way that is quite engaging for the audience. Museums have been really good at putting together good program for audiences. But also, you know, plenty of people, magazines, curators who have platforms, whether it's through the podcast, through conversation on Instagram, through an organization like yours. I mean, there are so many ways to engage with works that, I mean, I can see there's a lot of people I know who really regularly attend Zoom like this one, or are following conversation on Instagram. And there's an intimacy as well. I mean, all the conversation with artists on Instagram give you an access that you would not have usually as general audience, you know, who doesn't go to the gallery every day or every week, or, you know, who doesn't have a routine with art. So what we lost a lot. Of course, nothing replaced the fact that you go, you see the work, you have a physical you engage physically with works. But I think there is a lot that has been done in terms of making it more accessible. Contemporary art is typically not very accessible for a large audience. And I think we have gained in proximity with the digital platforms that brings contemporary art to your house, actually.
There's a question, thank you, Nadja, that came up a little bit with some preliminary talks with Dan, and saying that the gallery he was working with, Everyday Gallery, had Instagram and his own Instagram account that they reached several thousand people, and working with a vintage clothing company. Talking about something that's relative to all of you guys, the text is really important and language is also important, and understanding the contradictions of meaning and contextualization. Emer, your project Foaming at the Mouth, do you find that how did you capture some of the language that was ongoing at those events, or how important was it to capture it, or does it matter that it's not captured? And does that have any place in, say, an exhibition that Nadja has just co-curated? How are those exhibitions really interrogated, and how is that recorded as a legacy?
I think the main legacy from Foaming at the Mouth is it's in people's memories, and I do have a hard drive of information to bring forth into the public domain at some point. But it's just a huge body of work. It's 60 different artists to work with each person to portray what was really kind of a vulnerable moment for them, just to make sure that everyone's happy with how that's put forward. So I think that's, we initially were going to make a website, but I think we just underestimated how much time and resources that takes to do that. So I think, yeah, that's, but it does hold a legacy of its own in Dublin, I think.
And then for you, Nadja, who have a previous life as a journalist, you know, the legacy of having worked with these women, this new thing that Baranga's taking on, like as women as a collective. How will you be recording that, or is that being really taken on by someone else, or have you managed to input into the direction of the language and capturing those conversations between, say, the artists and the maestros in Venice, you know, the other people that are contributing to this, and then also, you know, how the artists are conceiving their own work and the relationship between them.
So in the catalog, most of the artists have expressed what the work they've shown has meant for them. So some talks about glass, but other talks about what they wanted to communicate. So a lot of the conversation in the exhibition has to do with violence and violence against women, and the feeling of being shut down. So which obviously was resonating with the lockdown or post-lockdown, because the summer was like a post-lockdown moment. But so it's a very it's a thread in the exhibition, this question of feeling not able to express things and to be shut down, and the lack of freedom and possibility to be yourself. And that's obviously our, you know, topics that still, I mean, it's an ongoing reflection. As for the relationship with the maestro, not every artist is really vocal about this. You know, not everyone has a reflection about it, but most do. But you know, some artists, they just do a drawing and they send it to the studio, and then it's up to the studio, to Berango or any studio, to interpret their work. But it's not the majority, but some do, you know, some do work like this. But in terms of the legacy, well, there's the catalog. Hopefully we can do the exhibition again somewhere else, in another country, and engage with new artists. from different countries. But it's a work in progress, you know. It is a work in progress to explore glass, the possibility of glass, because there's two things in the exhibition. There's glass and there's this topic of women, and giving a platform for women. And it's true that it was a very strong statement to have 64 women in an exhibition, coming from all over the world and meeting there in Murano, which is the historic center of glassmaking, even though there have been other places now in the recent years where you can do extraordinary things in glass, but it is the historic center of Murano glass and can become that again, even if in the past years Murano kind of lost a bit of its lusters, but it can be back, because Venice is a very special place. It's really a cross between culture, and it's a place where you can create like nowhere else. Because there is an ecosystem of intellectuals, scientists, researchers, artists, you know, what really emulates the creativity. So yeah, I don't know, but there's more to do. But I think we have to think about, you know, maybe having series of recorded comments that can be accessible for researcher.
Thank you so much, Nadja. Jens, have you any more questions there from the audience to direct to panelists?
There are quite a few, actually. I'll start with this one because that relates to what Nadja was just talking about. Again, to everybody, so just speak up if you want to react to this. Jerome Harrington, hi, asks, do you have an ideal viewer who you are creating or curating for? So what is your ideal audience? Or maybe you don't even think about that.
I do. Your neighbor, the man in the shop, the head curator of the museum, I think it should speak to everyone on some level. And I really am trying not to take anyone out of the experience of experiencing an artwork. So I think that it's important to really think about from how an artwork is mediated before you come to it, to the experience of it, that it should speak to everyone.
I don't think I have an ideal viewer, but when there is no viewer, I just don't make anything. So a viewer is super important for me, because it feels like that's where the I don't know, the magic happens. I'm not somebody that says that I do work for myself. I really want to make work to communicate and to have a dialogue and to understand my relationship toward other people, towards objects, and to bigger systems to the fullest, and thus create my own political or social stance within this bigger system that our world is. So a viewer is an essence for me to create and to have the experience come out of it, which is super central. So I don't think I have an ideal viewer, just somebody who wants to engage as well at some level. It doesn't even matter if they want to speak, but just looking and seeing people interact. It's also super fun when I have meetings at the gallery right now and seeing especially during the day groups of young people who are studying now in schools, and see how they react to the work, and how people just walk by, or how people seem to be interested in these little things. It's I don't know, that's the energy I really create for.
Just another picking up on that, and Nadja picked up on it a bit, Dan, is somewhere in your catalog it says, it mentions that the neon is a way out of melancholy. Could you talk to that in a little bit? Because they seem to be like fun pieces. Do you use neon?
That's the thing, is the way out of melancholy is just this ultra contemporary feel that the neon has, which is kind of funny because neons have been around for such a long time. But I think because it's emitting light and it's almost animated as it emits and drags you into the work, and it has something of advertisement and it's made to be sexy and it's made to seduce you to do something. So I think it's melancholy is maybe sitting back and pondering over things that are lost. And I think for me, the neons are really something that wants to drag you in and do something together and have a conversation. That's also the first time I made the big neon, the blue happy sad smiley, which is a smiley that's happy and sad at the same time, was because it was a wall that's 8 meters high. So that felt like something that could fill up the room because it's emitting something and it can really make the space work for you as well and almost have drag the viewer into the work. It becomes hard to not be in the work when you're walking by the light that's emitted from the works.
Can you talk, and thank you, that's a wonderful answer, Dan. Nadja, I noticed in looking at some of the exhibition pieces in place, and this is something Emer also looks at a lot, is spatial relationships and positioning of pieces in the work. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I saw some of the works would be in white spaces, and then other works in the exhibition would be on the glassblower's bench. How were those decisions arrived at?
Oh, well, I think I've answered.
That's okay.
No, but it's just like, you know, it's like putting all these elements together, and it's where what Cohn mentioned was crucial, because Cohn knows the space very well. He curated shows there, so he has a strong understanding of what works and what doesn't work in a space. So it was, I mean, obviously in the Fornace you have these big pieces, and that was, you could only put them there. So, but then it's how you complement them. It's like a puzzle, really, you know. I mean, you have to play with parts, but you know, things do find their place. It's a composition, you know. There's some magic to it as well. Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's not like this. You can't really decide like in a very. It's, you know, the work out there in the space, and you place them like you always do in an exhibition. I mean, you know, even if you have one room, you just have the works in front of you, and you place them. I mean, obviously you have done some work before on the computer or whatever to imagine how you want to do them, but there's something organic in the way you put works together. I think it's true for an artist who does hang his exhibition as much as is it true for a curator.
Would you agree with that, Emer, with your placing? Thank you, Nadja.
Yeah, I think what I've come to realize is that a lot of it's quite important to the scale of the person's own body, in terms of understanding it as a functional object or an art object, whether an item is placed on the floor or whether it's installed at different scales and heights. I think it's important that the person, the viewer, can relate to it at eye level, or step into an installation, or somehow engage with it in relation to their own body scale itself. So
very good. Well, thank you everybody for all of your sharing all of your experiences. I know you can't put a lifetime of experiences into one hour, but thank you so much. And also thank you to the audience for participating and posing questions. I'm going to give the floor over to Jens now to conclude.
Yeah, I have to find the microphone. Well, time runs, time flies. I could sit here another hour, but I don't want to bind you to this for longer. I hope we'll do this again one time. I think it was quite interesting, but not not enough for me, at least. I hope also our audience enjoyed this. This was the last of the series of 5 seminars that the glass virus organized, and I know we have some very loyal people in the audience, and every time there are new ones. Thanks for joining us, and just keep coming back. I want to thank Nadja and Emer and Daan for participating. I want to thank Caroline very much for moderating, but also for helping the glass virus in organizing these seminars. Just as much as I want to thank Gail Matthews and Bert Willems, who are also in this group of advisors for the glass virus. And I want to thank Judith Roux, who has been amazing in making all the things work that are so unfamiliar to us. Like this platform, which is still very, very strange to me. Also, I want to thank Ilse van Rooij, Marie de Bruin, and Eran Ehrlich, who've also been supportive in helping in this series. We are going to continue the series, or start a new series with the experience of this one, and hopefully also your feedback, the feedback from the audience. We will develop and design new seminars to make this platform worthwhile for many people. We were also invited to organize educational series of seminars at the Glass Art Society's conference in May. So you'll see us then. We'll send out newsletters, irregular ones, but we'll try to keep you updated on what we're doing. And we really, really want your feedback. So we're also sending a survey to everybody who has been on the panels and also the audience, and hope to get your feedback to just help to enhance what we can do and how we can do it, and keep this community going also online. And I think it's good to see and to hear from our panelists how you can still move on and be busy even with your audience in a distance. And I think there's a lot that we still have to figure out, but I think it makes me feel very optimistic. Anyway, I hope I didn't forget anything. I had something written down here, but I lost it. Anyway, we have to go off. So thanks again, and thanks to our panelists.
Well, thanks to you. It was a pleasure, really, to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll close this off, and I hope to see you again on this screen or in live.
Good evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.